Welcome, everyone. This is Mary Duskwood, Director of Operations and Research here at Burtch Works. Today, two of our senior quantitative recruiters, Linda Burtch and John Linn, will share the results of our 2021 Data Science and Analytics Salaries Study. For those of you who aren't familiar with Burtch Works, we're an executive recruiting firm specializing in fields like data science, analytics, marketing research, and data engineering. Over the past several years, Burtch Works market insights have been repeatedly mentioned in the press, including The Economist, The New York Times, The Wall Street Journal, CNBC, and the Chicago Tribune, among many others. Burtch Works has also been recognized by Forbes as one of America's best recruiting firms for several years running, and of course, most recently this year in 2021. And a quick introduction to our speakers today. The founder and managing director of Burtch Works, Linda Burtch, is an industry leader in data science recruiting and has dedicated her career to becoming a subject matter expert on the hiring market. Linda frequently speaks on data science and analytics career topics at industry conferences, corporate meetings, and webinars, and she has been an active member of the ASA and Informs for years. And as one of Burtch Works' recruiting managers, John Linn has over 7 years experience working with Fortune 50 companies through startups on their digital transformation efforts. His expertise includes technical recruiting and professional network and senior recruiters to develop data science, talent acquisition strategies, and expand our client relationships by addressing business challenges. And now over to you, Linda and John.
Thanks so much, Mary. That was a very nice introduction. Well, we have a jam-packed schedule today, lots of things to talk about. Not only the salary study, but I also want to share insights from the other research that we've been conducting on how the hiring market has shifted over this last year. And I've got to tell you, it has shifted like mad. So many of you are familiar with our recent research, and in fact, many of you have also participated in the surveys, and I want to thank you very much for that. So I've compiled a lot of insights that I want to share, but I do not have time, unfortunately, to present all of it. So be sure to check out our blog. It's got tons and tons of detail. Also, stay tuned. We have a lot more interesting insights as the months are going on here that we are going to presenting. So that we're going to be presenting. So make sure you stay in touch with us. Now, before we get into the data, I want to quickly mention a couple of things about our reports here. First of all, it is our 9th year, and our studies are used by a countless number of firms. Some of my hiring managers have told me that they have used it to get raises, not only for their teams, but also for themselves. So robust data and insights come out of these reports. John and I will be sharing the highlights, but make sure that you download the complete study to get into the details. So there's a lot of different ways of collecting data, but we do it in a way that we think is most accurate, and that's through one-on-one interviews. So we don't do online surveys. We talk to people all day, and of course, one of the things that we chat with them about are salaries. And surprisingly, almost everybody is willing to share. Now, I know that there has been a lot said and a lot made of the non-disclosure of salaries over the last handful of years, but personally, I've always believed in the opposite. So if everybody knew what everybody else made, there wouldn't be any funny business going on. So, but just let me thank you all for trusting Burtch Works and also sharing your information with us. Now, we released our first report back in 2013. The analytics and data science discipline has matured since then. Tools have become far more robust. Applications are everywhere, and academic programs have also matured. So every year, we are seeing more of a blending of the skills between what I would have traditionally called data science versus predictive analytics. But we still find that there is a difference in salaries. So for for now at least, we're going to keep the two separate and present them separately. John will talk about our definitions next, so you have a better understanding of that. Now, this webinar will have highlights, but afterwards, again, if you're looking for more data, there's a lot to be had, a lot of data. So there's over 50 pages in this particular report, and you can download it for free at burtchworks.com/study. Now, John's going to kick us off with an explanation of our methodology and a few definitions so we can set the stage. John.
Thanks, Linda. So for those joining for the first time, I want to first provide some detail around how we segment data scientists from other analytics professionals. We've always regarded data science as a specialized subset of analytics, and our hope in presenting these two sets of data side by side instead of in separate studies is to show some of the interesting comparisons between the two groups that we've noticed over the past few years. Burtch Works has typically segmented data scientists from other predictive analytics professionals because of skill set differences that lead to differing salary bands. But I hope you'll see from some of the other data we've highlighted here, there are other differences besides just their salaries. All right, so how do we separate these groups for our analysis? Both data scientists and predictive analytics professionals analyze data, glean insights from it, and prescribe action for their organization based on it. They both have the quantitative skill set, like modeling, et cetera. But the main distinction, as Burtch Works defines them, is that the data scientist's work focuses primarily on using unstructured or streaming data, while other predictive analysts use mostly structured data. As a result, you often see data scientists having a deeper computer science, coding, or programming skill set than their predictive analytics counterparts. While both groups may come from a statistics or math background, data scientists are more likely to have studied engineering or computer science, while analytics professionals are more likely to have a business or an economics background. We'll show some data on this a little later on in the webinar. We're also seeing new programs popping up and more professionals using online courses or boot camps to retrain or expand their skill sets. Both groups use a wide variety of tools to tackle their work. We've listed some of the common ones we tend to see and hear about here, but it seems like new tools are being mentioned on a monthly basis. All right, let's jump into the data. First, we'll start with our demographic analysis and take a look at the predictive analytics versus data science results side by side so you can make a comparison. As you can see, both disciplines continue to skew young, as there is so much interest in the field and so many data science and analytics education programs out there. Back in 2008, there was only one advanced degree program focused specifically on business analytics, and now there are over 300, which is tremendous for the industry. It's also clear that data scientists are much more PhD heavy, where predictive analytics professionals are more likely to have a master's degree as their highest degree. Almost 50% of data scientists hold a PhD, while nearly 20% of their counterparts in predictive analytics do. I also think it is important to notice about 95% of data scientists and 85% of predictive analytics professionals have some sort of secondary degree. Something to think about for anyone who's trying to break into these fields. I find this breakdown very interesting. We mentioned this earlier, and here's the data to back it up. When we look at the area of study from the highest educational degree, math and statistics is by far the most common field of study at over 1/3 of all degrees for predictive analytics professionals. Computer science is the most common for data scientists, with math and statistics, engineering, and natural science not too far behind. All four of those focus areas are hovering around the 20% mark. The largest discrepancies show up in computer science and natural science, which lean heavy towards data science, and also business, which leans heavy towards predictive analytics. Here we have another interesting piece of information showing the industries where predictive analytics professionals and data scientists are employed. A major change this year is the influx of data scientists in what we describe as the corporate other category. This category is made up of organizations in industries like entertainment, travel, hospitality, etc., that we don't have a large enough data set to break out into its own category. Historically, tech companies have really dominated the data science industry. But as there's an increased focus on making database decisions, analytics and data science are really diversifying across all industries, and we don't see as large of a variance as we have in the past. Here we have the gender breakdown. We continue to see a higher proportion of men in the quantitative fields, and the proportion of women is higher in predictive analytics than it is in data science. The 25% is a small drop off from last year's 28%. This could be due to the effects of the pandemic, where we saw more women affected in their work situation across the economy. It will be interesting to see if that number jumps back up over the course of the next year. With that, I'll turn it back over to Linda.
Thank you, John. Now let's talk about some of the trends that we've been observing over this last year. And there's been a lot of them. But firstly, we've seen an increase in the number of PhDs in the business analytics field. So instead of choosing an academic track, they'll go into an industry job now. We all know that business applications have been much more complex as data availability has exploded over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So this offers much more complex and intellectually challenging business problems to solve, and also the academics understand that it could offer at least a more lucrative career option from a compensation perspective. So we believe that this, at least in part, is what's driving these numbers up. We've seen a pretty significant drop in the number of business majors in our reports over time. Now, we've all read about the dozens of MBA programs shutting down across the country and the number of master's degrees in business analytics programs that have quickly grown to over 300. MBA may have been the standard for all management tracks in years past, but now and into the future, I'm predicting that a solid academic foundation in analytics is going to be the absolute key for advancement in corporate careers. Now, normally, our early career cohort is a pretty robust sample, but this year was definitely different. That was likely due to the fact that entry hiring was muted this year as a result of the pandemic. Now, clearly, part of that was due to the economic uncertainty, but also there were all kinds of complications and constraints because of the work from home that work from home presented in training and onboarding people. Now, another trend that we noted, the percent of the sample employed by financial services or advertising and marketing services continued to decline as a percent of the overall. Where have we seen increases? Certainly in healthcare. It's the industry that has grown the fastest. Not only the big sort of well-known health insurance organizations, but also on the provider side. So hospital systems and for sure the health tech startups are cropping up everywhere. Now, in previous years, many data scientists have felt that they needed to go to the West Coast tech firms or maybe to a startup to find the most interesting problems to solve. Now, that's all changed. With data platforms maturing, the more traditional industries like manufacturing, energy, and retail now have access to more data than they ever have before. And as a result, they're continuing to expand their use cases and are growing their data science teams. Now, the slides I'm sure you have all been waiting for. This is where everybody sort of wakes up if they've been dozing a bit. We're going to talk about salaries, and John is going to take it from here. John.
Thanks, Linda. So let's set the stage first by explaining the various categories. We've already outlined our criteria for predictive analytics versus data science, but we classify them into one of 6 job categories, and we'll refer to these categories throughout today's webinar, so I wanted to quickly review them with you all. So many of you may already know this, but for those of you who do not, when we analyze our data, first we assign each professional to a job category as either an individual contributor, as we abbreviate as IC, or a manager, as we abbreviate as MG. Then we break these ICs and MGs into one of three levels. Individual contributors at level 1 are typically those in the first 3 years of their career. Level 2 ICs have approximately 4 to 8 years of experience and are hands-on with the data, solving more advanced business questions. Level 3 professionals usually have over 9 years of experience and likely to help train or mentor analysts, and usually at this point are considered subject matter experts in their field. For managers, we also have 3 levels dependent upon their primary function and the number of people that they manage. A level 1 manager is typically tactical in focus and will manage 1 to 3 direct reports. A level 2 manager will be leading a function or responsible for executing strategy, while typically having 4 to 9 direct reports. And then managers at level 3 are the most senior leaders. They're typically at the executive level. They are responsible for determining the strategy of the entire team, have P&L responsibility for their area of the business, and will likely have a team of 10 or more people. Okay, let's see how the salaries changed for each group from our analysis in the 2020 study. Here you can see the individual contributor median salaries for predictive analytics, which only increased 4% at the IC2 level. Predictive analytics manager salaries were mostly steady as well, with just a small 2% increase at the manager 1 level. For data scientists, individual contributor salaries only had a noticeable change at the IC3 level, where the median salary dropped 3%. And finally, data science managers changed only at the manager 2 level, up 3% this year from last year's study. So as we mentioned before, one of the reasons we keep these groups segmented is their differing skills tend to impact salaries. And you can see by this chart just how much of a difference that can actually make. It's especially apparent among the individual contributors, where the difference is anywhere from 19 to 26%. The disparity becomes less pronounced among managers and executives, where their technical expertise is typically less important than their leadership skills as it relates to their salaries. Next, Linda is going to talk about the trends we are seeing as we talk to our clients and candidates. Back over to you, Linda.
Thanks, John. So I've got a lot of content to go over here. So let's get started on this. The market has pretty much exploded in the last 3 months. Businesses are extremely optimistic and sales have quickly turned up. And the result is the number of job openings has increased exponentially in analytics. I can say that not a day goes by that I don't get, 2, 3, sometimes even more client calls with multiple job openings. Some are new openings because of expansion, but others are due to attrition issues. Now, we surveyed our candidates and clients early on in the pandemic, and we found that many organizations, mostly in retail, travel, and hospitality, pretty much immediately instituted furloughs and/or job cuts. Now, this has not been the case in past recessions where layoffs were most commonly used and also hit across most industries, not just these targeted ones. Now, as the pandemic's economic toll became more clear, it became evident that the result perhaps might be more muted than they originally thought in the early days. Many who were asked to take cuts had their original salaries reinstated. So overall, we didn't see substantial changes to the salary numbers in this year's sample. Interestingly, we have seen a noticeable impact in a very positive way on retail salaries. Now, many retail firms have been going through a digital transformation for the last several years, but the pandemic forced them to really speed up that process. I cannot say that retail salaries are yet on par with the aggressive high-tech salaries. However, they have become far more competitive in this last year. Now, typically, West Coast data scientists and analytics professionals have seen higher salary ranges, but will this change as some of the companies take on remote staff in other areas? Will companies still pay the same price if talent is in a region with a lower cost of living? The widening of the talent pool, also spurred on by the increase in remote opportunities, could have a number of short-term as well as long-term effects on regional salary bands. But that, I'm thinking, is going to take some time to fully emerge. Now, companies previously restrained by location when hiring may find themselves with a newfound access to top talent if they pivot to offering more remote opportunities. Now, this has the potential to make the market increasingly competitive and may have interesting implications for the 2022 salary study. And I'm going to be sharing our predictions for 2022 in just a moment. Our 2021 salary data on hiring indicates a hiring boom, and I will be giving you some numbers on that in the next slide. Now, if you're part of our network, then you've likely seen some of our research and analysis over the last year, but I also wanted to include that in our presentation today. Now, this slide shows the results of a flash survey that we conducted just a couple of weeks ago on organizations' hiring plans. This represents over 125 companies across the US, and we found that 81% of data science and analytics teams are planning to hire during Q3 and Q4 of 2021. Now, this contrasts with the same survey results from the beginning of this year. We conducted the same survey in January, and that showed 73% of teams had planned to hire in the first half of 2021. And it's also interesting to note that in the beginning of 2020, so this was before the pandemic, 67% of teams planned to hire in the first half of 2020. So a year and a half ago, there was much less hiring anticipated. So what's driving this hiring frenzy? I have a couple thoughts on that. Number one, companies are racing forward with their digital transformation efforts. So sophisticated use of analytics is now just table stakes when it comes to staying in the game. Also, remote roles are driving attrition. So no more are you restricted to opportunities in your geographic area. And so that's creating a number of openings. And then finally, many people put their job searches on hold last year because of the uncertainty of the economic situation with the pandemic. So while there might not be twice as many jobs changes this year, I predict that there will be a substantial increase and greater than we've ever seen. So now that the reality of a return to normalcy is starting to approach, work from home is a topic that is in pretty much every workplace. Now, earlier this year, we surveyed data scientists and analytics professionals on whether they'd prefer working in the office or working from home. Now, we only gave them this binary option, so we wanted to see what they would say if it was kind of an all or nothing situation. So no surprise, 72% of our samples said they'd choose to work from home if they had only the option of one or the other. So then we asked, if a hybrid option were offered, how many days would you like to be in the office? Now, the highest proportion, 31%, said 2 days, followed by 3 days, 26%. Only 3% selected working in the office 5 days a week, and only 5% said 4 days a week. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all ultimately shakes out, not only between now and the end of the year, but then in the years to come. Now, we also sent out a survey asking professionals about work from home productivity. In this case, we had 341 respondents, and 71% of the sample said that working from home is more productive for themselves than working in the office. And then we asked, well, what about your team? And 50% believe that their team is more productive while working from home, which I thought was kind of interesting. They think they're more productive working from home, but they don't think their team is as productive. So I thought that was kind of an interesting finding from that particular study. So what's next? Well, of course, I have a few thoughts about that. I strongly suspect that salaries will go up, and that we'll be seeing that pretty clearly in the data next year. And the main drivers of that are, firstly, a very strong economy and a lot of business optimism. Also, work from home impacts. The opportunities to interview are much easier for candidates now. So also, there are no longer restrictions to companies that are local. You're not restricted to companies that are local to you. Then also, there is a pent-up demand that I mentioned earlier. Now, I'm hearing from hiring managers that they are completely frustrated at the turnover on their teams, and they're really challenged by how tight the job market is, and they're having a tough time recruiting. Also, random salary increases. We're just starting to hear about bosses giving increases to employees preemptively. And that's something you hiring managers really need to give some thought to. And anyone in HR needs to be prepared for. So there's one last slide that I want to show you to illustrate that this is already starting to happen. Now, this slide shows the salaries collected between May of 2020 through January of 2021, and then compares that to the salaries collected from February 2021 to April 2021 for data scientists. We wanted to see whether or not any difference in compensation was starting to show up recently. So interestingly, you can see that the trend upward is already evident. Now, some of that increase is likely due to reinstated salaries from last summer, but certainly not all of it. And we want to do more research on this in the coming months, but clearly salaries are on the rise as competition for analytics talent continues to escalate. All you hiring managers and human resources people really need to pay attention to this. So much more to come, so be sure to stay tuned. This is a really exciting time. I say that last year was probably the most disruptive period of time in our careers, right? And this year will be the second most disruptive year. So in the upcoming weeks, we'll be exploring more around the attrition issue, and that's right now, it's really front and center. So I hope you will participate in our flash surveys so we can include your knowledge, and I can't wait to see what this research is going to be telling us. So definitely stay tuned. And with that, I'm going to turn things back over to Mary.
Thank you so much for digging into all of that fascinating data and analysis, both Linda and John. That was really great. And of course, if you are looking for more data and analysis, check out our salary study. The full report breaks down salaries by quartiles, looks at salary means as well as medians, and examines salaries by demographic factors like industry, gender, region, and much more. And this year, it includes an extensive section summarizing our latest research and insights on developing hiring trends. There's over 50 pages in this study, so it's a lot of great stuff. And you can download it for free at burtchworks.com/study. And if you're looking to add to your data science or analytics team, we'd be happy to speak with you and do some brainstorming about what you might have planned in terms of hiring before the end of the year. We offer contingency and retained services, as well as contract staffing services, from entry-level analysts all the way up to chief analytics officers, chief data scientist searches, etc., as well as a plethora of data engineering specialties. Feel free to send us an email if you want to chat. It's info@burtchworks.com. And if you're looking for more hiring market insights, check out burtchworks.com/blog, where you can find additional survey results on SaaS Python, hiring trends, work from home trends, and more, as well as career and hiring tips specifically tailored to the data science and analytics market. And to stay up to date on our latest research and all of the interesting things we have coming up in the months to come, you can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And on our YouTube channel, of course, found at youtube.com/BurtchWorks. That's where you'll find recordings of all of our other presentations, including 2021 data science and analytics predictions from earlier this year, a career session Q&A with our recruiters, and the Analytics Enthusiasts webinar series, which includes a roundtable interview with senior analytics leaders focused on sports analytics. That one was so interesting. I highly recommend it. And of course, this webinar will be recorded and put up on our YouTube page as well. And so now it looks like we've got some time to talk about your questions. John and Linda are ready to answer them. So if you have them, please send them into the questions field on the webinar. And we've got some already that you put in before on the registration page. So we're going to jump right in and get started. All right. So of course, one of the big topics right now is about work from home, as you guys mentioned in the presentation. But do you have any sense of what you're hearing from, our clients, other companies, about what their work from home and hybrid policies are going to be looking like for analytics and data science professionals?
John, you want to comment on that first?
Sure. Yeah, I can jump on that one. So yeah, it is a very relevant topic right now, and not just for our clients, but for the individuals that we speak to on a daily and weekly basis. It's kind of interesting, the number of individuals which I've spoken to that have said, hey, I've actually relocated and I no longer live where I used to live, and my employer, necessarily doesn't know, and I don't plan on moving back. So I'm looking for a job right now in a new market or a 100% remote opportunity. Is kind of crazy. And I think it's going to lead to an interesting situation here in the next 3 to 6 months as organizations continue to bring their people back into the office and start making it mandatory. Now, I do believe that there's going to be a very limited number of organizations, based on conversations that we've had, that are going to go back to 100% 5 days expectation to be in the office. The vast majority of our organizations, if they haven't already adopted a 100% work from home attitude, are at least looking at some sort of hybrid model. And many of them are still going through that discussion right now to figure out what that's going to look like and when that's going to be put in place. So it will be very interesting, I think, over the next 3 to 6 months as these programs get put into place and organizations start asking their employees to come back into the office, how that's going to shake out in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be, we could have a different answer for you next year, but for the moment, it looks like it's going to be almost all organizations are going to offer a hybrid, and because of the frenzy in the job market, they may be forced to go to the more remote, 100% remote option, at least in some cases.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what we're going to be saying about this next year when we do this webinar.
Yeah, right.
All right. Our next question is about I think the other major talking point that we've been hearing about over and over, and that's attrition. So there's a lot of attrition going on. So what is the reason? Why are people jumping to new roles so much right now?
Well, I think we talked a little bit about that during the salary study. I think there's a lot of pent up demand, for lack of a better phrase here to describe it. But a lot of people were nervous about making job changes last year. And as a result, that's going to push that to greater numbers this year, just sort of naturally. But also the work from home option. Now people don't have to move to San Francisco and go work for a tech company. And so they're considering those kinds of options now, whereas they didn't have those options in the past. So John, anything to add on that?
No, I don't think so. I think you pretty much hit on everything that I would have aligned. And I think, as you said, right, in the study, we certainly talked about that a little bit. It's going to be continue to be something that's going to be prevalent, I think, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I guess my only add is if you have any thoughts of your own, please feel free to reach out to us. This is definitely a topic that we really want to learn more about and hear opinions and data from you guys. So also on
it's been pretty interesting in conversations I've had with hiring managers over the last 6 weeks or so. Some of them are just so discouraged because of the high attrition level. So if you're experiencing high attrition, you are not alone. So it's kind of, I mean, I don't want to say it's sad, but it's disheartening for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And segueing very nicely from that, actually, Linda, is our next question, also about attrition, which is, are you hearing anything about how companies are planning to combat this problem?
Yeah. A little bit, not a lot. So stay tuned on that. That's a topic that I really want to really probe on more, because I think it's so important for our hiring managers to understand what the best techniques are to combat this. But certainly. We have heard about some preemptive salary increases. So that's a tool that many of them are using. Also, if you've been resistant to remote workers in the past, you probably need to rethink that. So the whole remote option, I think, is going to become front and center when it comes to retention. And then also retention bonuses. I mean, that's another way. It's a tried and true method of getting people to recommit to staying with an organization, and that's worked in the past. Actually, my son got a retention bonus not only for this year but for next year too, which I'm like, you're kidding me. So he's a software developer in the tech community, so that's not a surprise. But the other thing I wanted to mention here is that I think it's also important for companies to understand how to effectively recruit analytics professionals, because I see a lot of mistakes in the hiring process itself. It really needs to be buttoned up, and there's just no other way to describe it than make sure you know what the process is going to be, what you can what your absolute requirements are. But where can you flex and where can you train? The process needs to be identified and stuck with. You can't have 3 weeks between interviews. A lot of the clients who are moving quickly through the interviewing process are the ones that in the end ultimately get the candidate. So that process has to be fast. So finally, what I want to say is, you got to put your best foot forward when you're interviewing candidates. That is critically, I mean, it should be a natural thing, but a lot of times clients will make the mistake of, sort of being taking the lead in a job situation, in a job interviewing situation, and you need to be a little careful about that. You need to sell your opportunity and make sure whoever it is that's interviewing understands why it would be a compelling next move for them. And not enough companies pay attention to that, surprisingly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I couldn't agree more with all of that, Linda. I think one other thing that I'll add is, in kind of that last point where you said it's compelling for somebody to make a next move, I think it's really important for managers and directors to understand their teams, do their teams feel like they have a good next step in their career where they're at? And I think we see a lot of the changes come really at what we would consider our IC1 and IC2 levels, because individuals work somewhere for 18, 24 months, maybe 36 months, and then they can get a huge increase in pay. But also they're looking for increased responsibility. They're looking for growth. They're looking for a sense of learning, in fact, that they can advance their career. And, obviously I talked with some of my colleagues today about this point prior to this webinar. And, we're hearing a lot of individuals saying, I feel like I don't have a lot of growth opportunity here. I don't know what my track is, or I don't know where I can end up within this organization. And I think having those conversations with your teams and your individual team members are extremely important to giving them a good foundation to feel like they have a future at your organization and they can grow there and they don't need to look externally to advance their career.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you both. That was a very comprehensive answer. Our next question is, are you seeing within, the companies that are coming to you with job requests, the idea of a full stack engineer, so combining data engineering and data science and machine learning ops and all of that into one person? Are you seeing that become more prevalent or no?
I would say no. There's always going to be that kind of job because if you're in a startup situation, you're expected to jump in and be able to do the whole thing from the data munging through the modeling through the deployment. But what's happened over the last 5 years or so is this emergence of the data engineering role. And that person's role is to get the data ready and work with the data scientists, but not be involved with the modeling aspect of things. And then on the back end, once the models are developed, to really see that the deployment of that goes well. And the reason the reason that those that data engineering sort of emerged as a discipline is because the data scientists they're paid at different levels, right? So they don't want data scientists spending a whole lot of time doing data munging. And at one point they used to say that was 80% of the job is the munging part of the data. And so it was a very expensive proposition to use a data scientist to do that kind of work. So that's why, we've seen this segmentation of the data scientist's career.
Yeah, I would agree. Really, we're only seeing it in the smaller organizations where, I think an individual knows going into that spot that they're going to be asked to wear many hats. But in the, mid-sized to large-sized organizations, they're staying pretty separate. I would agree.
Yeah, that's good to know. And then the next question we have is sort of similar. Do you think it makes sense for an analytics or data science professional to be more of a generalist or a specialist as far as their skill set?
Yeah, I can jump in and start on that one. I think, early on in someone's career, I think it's the most important thing is to garner and gather as much skills as you possibly can. And I think that's going to allow you, one, to have a broad, good sense overall of data science and analytics, but two, allow you to understand where you really excel and can really generate a lot of value for an organization. I think, individuals, once they get to kind of the 6th year in their career, maybe give or take a couple of years, we typically see them start to specialize in a particular domain. Now, that's not to say it's impossible for someone to jump from one industry to another later in their career, but typically organizations from a leadership standpoint, if that's the route that you want to go, or from a really a technical leadership, right, as it relates to data science and analytics, organizations want somebody that has domain knowledge and is going to be able to come in and really hit the ground running and provide impact early on. So that's really kind of what I'm seeing. Linda, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
Absolutely. The more senior you go, you have to be able to point to some evidence that you have seen these sorts of problems before. So early, my advice to any early career person is make sure you build a very broad base of skills as much as you possibly can, either by changing industries or changing applications or whatever that might be. But do it early on, because the more experience you have, the more money you're making, the more critical it is to have had prior experience in that particular area. So that has remained true all through, for as long as I've been doing this. The other thing I'll mention, though, what I'm seeing as a trend, in particular in data science, is there's been a different tracks that people are starting to take. They will become an expert in, let's say, IoT or computer vision or next best action or whatever that might be, and then they follow that career track. But again, early on, don't just become that expert. Get a broad base if you possibly can.
Yeah, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself in case things change down the line, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah, and then I know I've heard all of the recruiters talk about this particular topic, and I think this might be our last question. But what are your thoughts on getting job offers in order to negotiate your salary at your current company?
Oh, terrible idea. It's that's just not the way to do it. I mean, I know young and naive professionals may do that, but I don't know. It's wasting everyone's time. If you're unhappy with your compensation, then go to your boss and tell them that you're unhappy with your compensation. You will burn bridges if you do that kind of thing. So, John, you want to comment on it?
Yeah, I would just say you're sacrificing trust within your organization, and that's a tough thing to come by. It's even a tougher thing to build back. So I would agree. I think it's going to continue to happen. I don't think it's going to stop. But I just think it sets up for a little bit more of a toxic environment and toxic relationship, and it's really, really difficult to rebuild that and regain that after the trust has been broken. So, I think if you're genuinely looking to make a change, and you want to at least have that conversation per Linda's suggestion with your hiring manager, I think that's the route to go. If an organization values the skill set and you believe you provide a lot of value to them, right? I think it's starting to become more and more common, as Linda has already mentioned a couple of times, to see these kind of retention bonuses or, salary increases kind of, unprompted, no promotion, no nothing. We just see that this individual, can garner more potentially out on the marketplace. And, we have great salary data to back that up. So, yeah, I would agree. It's not something that I would certainly advise to do.
No. And if a candidate does that and we know about it, they get a little black X next to their name. There's just stuff like that just I'm sorry, but it really makes me mad.
Yeah. And, just as the opportunity to once again plug our salary study, as Linda mentioned at the top of the call, a lot of people have used our data to do that very thing, is to go to their organization and say, here's what my market value is, let's discuss, rather than going out and getting another offer. All right, that's going to be all our questions for today. So thank you so much to everyone that submitted your thoughts and your questions, and please feel free to always reach out to us. We love hearing from you. None of this is possible without your input. And thank you for joining us today. Don't forget that our study is available for free to download at burtchworks.com/study. And if you want to reach out to us about your own job search or your organization looking for talent or whatever topic you want to discuss about the job market, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us and have a great rest of your day.